for me, there wasn't really going to be a question of what I was going to offer people. It was going to include surfing. Yes, I do regular in-office counseling without it, but I can tell you the path for people that do surfing, that their path to healing is much deeper and it's much faster, because when you connect to your brain and your body and you use things like this as a tool, it allows you to deal with things in a really safe way that sometimes you kind of can't tap into with just talk therapy.
All right, Dana, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. So, we will start off just by having you introduce yourself and who you are, what you do, and really the depth of how far you want to go with that is completely up to you. But I think just given the commonalities that we both share with a few different things as far as professional somewhat and then personal kind of leisure activities that we really share enjoyment in as well. I think we could have a lot to talk about from there. But yeah, feel free to just share as much as you want about yourself and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Thanks. So, hi, everybody. I'm Dana Forrest. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I live in New Jersey. I started a private practice last year. It's called Swell Therapy. And at Swell Therapy, my main focus is offering a surf therapy program. I do a few different services. I do in-office counseling. I specialize in working with 16 to 24-year-olds who are just trying to figure out life. Really, really good people, good kids, just have big life questions. I started doing mental health work about 14 years ago. I worked in a school for a long time. I joined the Peace Corps, which maybe I'll share a little bit on here about how that got me into surfing. But right now, I also have a full-time job. I work at the hospital here in Manahawkin, Southern Ocean Medical Center. I'm their supervisor for their crisis unit. So we see psychiatric emergencies, anybody from 5 years old to 105 years old, and pretty much everything you can imagine. So my practice was born out of, number one, a need for our community, but also when I sat down to think about what I really wanted to do every day, it involved surfing. And I thought about what surfing did for me and a lot of the people that are really close to me. I don't really know anybody that surfs that it doesn't help their mental health. So, I can share a little bit more as we talk about, that program, what that means. But yeah, that's who I am.
I love that. Yeah, surfing definitely does it. And I've talked about in a few different episodes just what that does for me personally. And yeah, like you said, I mean, anybody that you talk to that has, I call it like a practice, really, like a yoga practice or a meditation practice, like a surfing practice. Really, it does pretty much the same thing that a meditation or a yoga kind of session would do for you as well by the time you get out, and then some. But yeah, if you could just really share the benefits that you personally see, and then also working with such a kind of unique population. I mean, 16 to 24 is such an interesting time in life for everybody, whether you're seeking services or not. But yeah, and I guess just really what you're seeing with the kids that you're working with, or young adults really that you're working with, and then also
Sure.
just what it does for yourself too.
Yeah, sure. So for me, surfing came at a time when I had really big questions on my mind. When I came home from the Peace Corps, I was really just kind of lost and trying to figure out how to reintegrate, how to bring the things that had been on my mind there back home. Um, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out a lot of different things. And so my friend literally forced me to go surfing. It was something that seemed fun a couple times, but then I got some pretty heavy days and I was like, oh, I don't really like that. But I really forced myself to just keep going back to it. And every time I went back, I realized that it's hard to describe what it does for you, but it makes you sit still. It makes me just totally decompress in a way that I really need. 10 years later, I'll tell you that I'm addicted to it. People around me can tell the days I've surfed, I'm just totally at peace, at ease. My mood is I'm on top of the world, you know? It gives such a shift there, but how it affects people. So the surf therapy program is really for all ages, but I have taken some people out surfing and I'll tell you, my friend's daughter came out and started surfing with me a lot, and my friend will tell you, her biggest benefit to get their kid off her phone. It makes her really present away from the drama. She puts social media down, and then she kind of just turns into this different person, in a really positive way after she surfs. So I don't know. It's something that makes you challenge yourself. There's plenty of like really nice, easy, glassy days out there, but there's other days where you get held under and you have to search for your soul and why do I do this? I'm a big believer that challenging yourself makes you find out who you are. And that is certainly true for me, especially with surfing.
Without a doubt, yeah. I think the most fun is typically in the smaller kind of within your comfort zone days, but those bigger days, I mean, as terrible as it is at the time when you're getting held under and you're like, what did I had a feeling I shouldn't have come out today. What was I doing? I should have just stayed in. But then you like get back to shore and you're like, all right, so I could have died. That's cool. So now I can like go about my day not being dead and like really have a different perspective of it. And then, yeah, like you said, all the other stuff that comes with it too. I mean, the physical, there's obviously such a workout kind of portion of it as well. And your endurance just gets so increased from it. And then, yeah, really, I found too, because I've had a meditation practice for a while and kind of dabbled in and out with yoga. But I feel like the meditation kind of more specifically. But the one thing that is still really tough for me when the days where it's bigger and you go surf and you get held under is just not panicking. And I feel like that's kind of the best lesson that you could have is when you get held under to like not thrash. Like you're underneath, you're not going to fight the ocean. You're clearly nowhere near as strong as this thing. And you basically just have to let go. And it's just,
Oh,
you
yeah.
could sit for hours in meditation and you finally kind of get like an inkling of that. And you go out there and for 5 seconds and your life passes you by, you come up and you're seeing spots and all you needed to really just accept was like, all right, I'm just going to let go and calm down. And then you come back up. And then of course you're always going to go out for more, even though you know that's there and it sucked. Like you're like, but I learned enough from it that it was worth it.
Yeah, but you get that one good wave and it's enough to keep bringing you back, right? Like, talk about gratitude. There's nothing more grateful than being in a state where you come up for that breath of air and then you got to go back down, but you just get that breath and you're like, all right, that's it. Like, that's all I needed, right? You have to, well, it makes you surrender.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And so I think I might kind of know a bit about the story, and this might have been like the Peace Corps kind of era of your life too. But when you had started surfing, was it like in the South Pacific? You were in, I think, the island somewhere, right?
So yeah, I was in Fiji. I actually didn't start surfing until I came home. My boyfriend came to visit me and he was a surfer and we went out to Cloud Break and my big success story is I snorkeled Cloud Break. Which, all these years later, I'm kicking my own butt. But yeah, he had like the best day of his life out there surfing Cloud Break and oh, it's just a perfect shoulder high, glassy day. I got a little video on my channel. You can see it just peels for miles and miles. But yeah, it was when I came home that I really started because I was just going through it. Like I just had so much on my mind. I needed a place to put it all. So physical challenge isn't something that came naturally to me in life. I was a kid that grew up with allergies and asthma. I would, in high school gym class, when they would cut the grass, I'd have to go inside because I would break out in hives.
Feel
So
that.
physical, yeah, it just didn't, it never came to me. So I really had to work super hard to do any sort of physical challenge to overcome and make myself want to do it. It took a long time for me to see the value in it.
Yeah. And hey, what better way to escape allergies than on the open ocean?
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Oh man. Yeah. It's like I said, we can go on for hours just talking really about like the stories of surfing and the benefits of it too. It's been such an influential thing in my life and the tough times, anytime that things have just been absolute chaos and anxiety in your chest and life, like you get out there on the ocean, it's literally like you're looking back at just that life. And then you get out there and I mean, really, if you think about it, what part of our life do we not have solid feet on the ground? Like there's always just feet on the ground at some point, and then you go to the ocean and everything is just flowing and unstable and uncertain like life, and it reminds you of that. And really doesn't matter the challenge that you're going through at the time, just being on the water is so hard to put to words, really. And we've talked about it. We had Wallace J. Nichols, for any listeners that have read the
Yeah.
book Blue Mind, I know you have, but he talks really about, the science of it, and he could go on and on and on about how beneficial it is. But really, it's just a matter of everybody kind of has their own story of water and what exactly with water, what does it mean to you? What's your water? What's your beach? What's the thing that like holds the kind of special place in your heart? And yeah, just surfing, like you just get so many opportunities to go to different places and try different things and just see the little kind of nuances of how one spot breaks a little bit differently depending on, if it's a point break or if it's a beach break, and just like to appreciate all of the variety in that. And yeah, I love it. I
Yeah.
could go off just fanboying all day on it.
Yeah, for sure. I was listening to an interview Kelly Slater did yesterday, and somebody asked him what surfing means to him, which I'm sure you can imagine it means everything to him. But he said what surfing does for you is it gets you plugged into the world around you, right? It's like the people in the lineup, it's your own surfing, right? But it gets you also in touch with your body, what you're feeling. When you try to teach somebody to surf, you're telling them it's a feeling. You feel when the wave takes you, right? It's like there's so many people that are disconnected from their body and they can't feel it. But there's so many other things too, like travel and perspective. And I've been really fortunate. I've traveled a bunch to surf. We went down to Puerto Rico a couple times this winter and really had a ball, but it gets you really plugged into the world around you. I love it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And on that too, like you were talking just kind of about how like some people, it's hard to get in touch with your body. And, when you're trying to learn to surf too, it's kind of a big change to have to really, really be in touch with every part of it. It's like ice skating or something like you have to be so kind of fine tuned with things. But I think the most amazing and just like impressive thing to me is we lived in Hawaii for a couple of years, and I obviously was out there probably the worst guy in the lineup every single time I go, because most of the time the best surfers in the world are at some break somewhere, especially on Oahu and North Shore and South Shore. And yeah, I mean, wherever you go, you're definitely like the bottom of the barrel as far as talent. But um,
Talk about humbling.
yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And then also, it's a whole nother thing with, which makes sense, but the being out in the lineup and the respect for, the locals there, it gets a little kind of crazy. You're pretty much always getting the leftovers and you're never getting like the point on, the best break. But yeah, back to what I was saying too, as far as just kind of being in touch, like there are some, and I could still remember paddling back out and just watching these people, the people that are just so effortlessly, unbelievably in touch with the board and the wave. They're just amazing to watch. And a lot of them too, like the female surfers that are down there too, like I guess it's just kind of that feminine side of things, just really being in touch with the water and the
Mm.
ocean. But some guy surfers too, it's just watching, especially on like longboards, just like walking up to the nose and then coming back and just making it like such like a dance almost. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch. It's like going to like a luau and watching like hula dancing and anything. I mean, you could really relate it to anything outside of Hawaii too, but it was such an amazing thing to just watch how in touch and in tune with the body, with the wave, with the board, with everything, and just watching that all click. It's like, oh, I wish I was that good.
Yeah, well, it's a real creativity. It taps into emotion. I think the people that are really skilled in that style are people that really can get out of their head. They just have a way to just be. It's really beautiful.
Without a doubt, yeah. And that's the one thing also with like tour surfing and watching some of that in the competitions. Like, of course, the best surfers without a doubt in the world, but that's the one thing I kind of find interesting with it, because it's a competition. And I feel like surfing started never like that. Surfing started as just getting into your body and in touch with everything and reaping the benefits. But just watching and hearing some stories of, surfers that were on the tour that are just like, that's not for me. But the fact that it like has become a sport, even though like it's a sport, of course, but it's become like a competitive sport. It's just so odd. Like the more kind of tap into the benefit side of surfing and just the kind of chill meditative side of it, going out and like watching a surf competition is crazy. Like you're jockeying for position in the lineup, and you're just so like intensely like just yeah, that's something that I've
It,
always found really interesting.
it brings out like our primal side.
It does, which you gotta have the balance of everything, which I appreciate it. I mean, these dudes are surfing the biggest, best waves in the world, and they're the best surfers in the world. But yeah, it is definitely interesting to watch and hear the stories too, just about some people that like were on the tour. Those are probably my favorite professional or ex-professional surfers, the ones that are just like, yeah, it was just not. I felt like I lost my love for surfing because of it, because I went too
Hmm.
down that like competitive kind of rabbit hole. But yeah, really interesting.
How old were you when you started surfing?
So I've honestly not really been surfing for a really long time. We lived in New Jersey in Manahawkin, 10 minutes from LBI. And I've surfed here and there growing up and living at home. And, I was more like skimboarding. I'd kind of mess around with that, but never really got hardcore into it. And then we moved in 2018 to Colorado, and not having the ocean, I was like, first of all, what was I doing? Just not taking advantage of being that close to the ocean for all those years. And New Jersey, I mean, for East Coast surf is kind of like the best you could get. And especially this past winter when we were there, a lot of fun. But when we moved to Colorado, I was like, something has to change. So we ended up moving to San Diego. And then that's when it was like all bets were off. And I was off work for a little bit at the time, and it was just every single day, sometimes 2 times a day. And then, yeah, from that point on has just been an absolute staple in my life multiple times a week. Like it has to happen. If I'm not in there in one day, it's like, oh, look what it's doing to my mental health. So yeah, I mean, it's really only been like 5 or 6 years, like really, really going hard with it, but it's just such a life changer.
It's funny how addicting it gets. When you don't have it, you know that you need it, and you just there's just like a searching, like, I have to get in the water.
Yeah,
Um, cool.
for sure. For sure. Well, I'm sure those that are listening that don't surf, they're probably like, "All right, that's enough." But hey, if we could convince anybody just to get out there, that was the point of that. But to circle back a little bit to how you're integrating it into your life and your profession, which is super admirable, by the way, and so cool that you were
Thanks.
able to really take that leap. But I'm interested to kind of hear your journey of how long it took you, or what was kind of that final point where you're like, I just have to change it. I have to incorporate it. But like, what really led you to that shift to incorporate surfing into your professional career?
Yeah, sure. So it was a long journey. I have a little bit of a long story, but so when I was in the Peace Corps, it was the first time in my life that I had really stood still. I had just finished my graduate program, double master's degree, worked a bunch of jobs, just always on the go, always busy. When people asked you, like, hey, you want to hang out? I would have like plans and backup plans and backup plans for backup plans. And um, I joined the Peace Corps after I got my heart broken pretty bad and just wanted to go. Like, I just needed to get out of here. I couldn't afford to just, go live on an island by myself. So when I got there to the Peace Corps, we walked everywhere. And I found myself walking 5 to 10 miles a day. And I started getting this, what I'll call emotional flooding. Like all of a sudden, like I just, all this stuff started rushing in of like past memories and emotional stuff. And I just had this like holy hell moment where, um, I had to start doing a lot of writing, a lot of reprocessing of things. We all tell ourselves a story of what our life is. And when I was in the Peace Corps, I really had to refigure out my story. So fast forward to when I got home, I had to really walk a lot again to kind of sort through some things. I had already done my master's degree for therapy and started practicing therapy. And it wasn't until I learned about this therapy practice, it's called EMDR, that I really understood what was happening for me when I landed in Fiji and started doing all that walking. Um, EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that's like a heavy term for it's the way your brain operates. So we have two sides of our brains. And what happens is when you have really high stress, some people will use the word trauma, your left hemisphere of your brain goes offline. And what EMDR does is it connects literally one side of your body to the other while you're thinking about that visual thing, right? So if you go back and you think about something that was stressful for you, it quiets your mind. There's a part of your brain that is like your emotional center. It's attached to your memory center. And when you do this bilateral stimulation, it really like inhibits that. It makes it feel safe for you to rethink these thoughts. So I know this is a long story, but essentially what started happening to me is the more I went surfing, it was another avenue for me to tap into that left, right, left, right. It's a rhythmic pattern of using both sides of your body. So this is why like people like to walk, people like to run, people like to go for a swim. Like these things can be really, really decompressing for us. And so there was like this parallel process for me is like personally, I had gone through all of these things. And as I stepped my way through my professional career, I learned a lot more about like really what's happening in your brain and your body. And having experienced it, I was able to kind of step my way through it. I started like diving into a bunch of research and trying to really wrap my head around like what was physically happening. You know, tried it with a bunch of different people, and surfing really became something that I understood taps into that like EMDR state of mind. So I work in the emergency room doing crisis assessments. I work with people that are suffering at levels that are hard for some people to imagine. I don't really know why it comes natural to me, but I love to hear people's stories. I can really take, that heaviness of hearing people suffering. I gravitate towards like wanting to alleviate it and help people with it. So during the pandemic, we saw a really big mental health crisis emerge here. And I just kept hearing like there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. People don't have something to do. And so I'm located in the southern part of Ocean County, and I just decided that when I started my own private practice, I wanted to do things that I knew that worked. And I hope I've explained it well enough that for me, there wasn't really going to be a question of what I was going to offer people. It was going to include surfing. Yes, I do regular in-office counseling without it. But I can tell you the path for people that do surfing that, their path to healing is much deeper and it's much faster, because when you connect to your brain and your body and you use things like this as a tool, it allows you to like deal with things in a really safe way that sometimes you kind of can't tap into with just like talk therapy. Does that help explain a little bit of like the background for why it was so necessary for surfing?
Absolutely. Yeah. And coming from like a healthcare kind of background, we go to school really to learn about that stuff. So to be able to have that kind of education of why is this helping, and then also be able to just put it into practice with something that clearly is just like beyond words and beyond education beneficial, like being in water. I mean, it touches on everything that you've personally experienced that benefits when it comes to those, healing certain things, and then also gets you into a setting and into an environment that amplifies that times 1,000. So
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Did you ever go surfing and we'll call it an epiphany, like either in the water or like later that day or, a few days later, like it just like unlocks something in you where you're like, oh, and it could be something like as small as like something for work that you've been trying to like figure out, well, how do I make this happen? Or like, I don't know, in your relationship or something emotional.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing for sure. And I'm interested too, just like a little bit more about, you said it was EMDR is the correct acronym. So for people that might be going through something and hear this and, want to get out or walk or surf or whatever, just kind of incorporate like that bilateral movement. Like, is it something that like doing that and being involved in those movements is just going to bring kind of more of that up, or is it more of a matter of, kind of traumatically or whatever kind of emotional or physical stuff that you need to address within yourself, and then you do that and it kind of helps you like work through it? Like, how do you use that exact practice and technique with people that might be suffering from anything?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks. So EMDR is a practice that therapists will use. You have to go and get trained in it. And it's something that The concept is you have this like traumatic history or moment or something that you really just like can't work through, and you sit in the office and you have a therapist that originally was made with a light bar where you would move your eyes and it would be in this rhythmic pattern and your eyes would go left to right. Now they have other things where they have like tappers and a buzz one hand and then the other, but essentially you sit with that visual cue on your mind, whatever that image is of that horrible moment for you. And as you do that bilateral stimulation and you work with a therapist, you actually get to revisit it and you can rewrite your story with it. For people that have had trauma, I just think trauma is like a really stressful state. It's something that it's connected to a feeling of danger, right? You don't feel safe and it's really stressful. But that can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people. So you can do like a formal EMDR. What I guess, talking about is more of an informal EMDR, right? If you go out and you have something stressful on your mind, let's say like, I don't know, you found some text messages in your wife's phone and you're really stressed about it. So you go for a walk and that EMDR state, it gets you to connect and kind of de-stress and bring the emotion out of it so you can think about it in like a really safe way. Yeah, I think that you can do it in a lot of different ways. They call it refiling upsetting memories is really one of the biggest things that that kind of stimulation does for you.
I love that, and I could just see, like, so much benefit that could be had in especially younger kids. I mean, the podcast, we talk to parents primarily and really anybody, but parents that are dealing with younger children who are working through something too. I mean, that's another big thing of today's world and how to handle behaviors, and there's just so much information out there and the right way to go about it. And I mean, I think just first glance, like looking at it, yelling at your kids or telling them what they're
Yeah.
feeling is probably not the right way.
Yeah,
But
that reactive state, sure.
yeah, yeah. So I just feel like what you're kind of saying with that too, like there's so many different ways that not only can a parent get out of that reactive state by utilizing whatever it is. I mean, of course, those split second reactions are kind of tough sometimes to work through, without a doubt. But with kids too, like when kids are feeling a certain something, instead of just sending them to timeout or to a corner, like really getting on their level and being like, hey, let's go out and do this specific movement, or this specific act is actually going to help you work through those emotions. And again, so many like strategies and so many like specifics out there, but I think that's also a lot of the things that kind of turn parents off from different techniques, is because they're so complicated and it's like, oh, I got to remember this is the first way to react. I feel like there's just a lot of steps and a lot of different things that you have to kind of remember to do or to not do, when it's just kind of really simple for the most part. I mean, easier said than done, but just really being able to like get yourself and find like techniques that are going to calm yourself, calm your kid, to be able to get into a less reactive state and a more centered, calm, aware state, to be able to react in a more appropriate way.
Yeah, for sure. So they say when you are having trauma, but again, it's really just stress, right? Your left hemisphere of your brain goes offline, and left is where language is. So that's where a lot of people really lose themselves, right? That reactive state. And so, the encouragement is to try and sit in the emotion in like a really safe way, right? We want to teach our kids to feel emotions, but also be able to process them and think through them, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm angry. Well, what are you angry about, right? And like being able to connect the anger with words and like what's going on? And like it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad, right? Those kind of things. And, I'm sure as a parent, it's a little harder to deal with your own emotions sometimes too. So finding ways to do that, it will be really helpful for your kids.
Definitely. Yeah, that's been the one thing just in my own kind of self-improvement journey. When we had our daughter, it was like I kind of knew, like I had that little talk with myself. I'm like, this is the next step. You might think you could sit in meditation and yoga and you're like this Zen master, and you can go surf and you come out and just everything's cool, nobody can get to you. But then just having a kid it's around the clock. I mean, it's really your responsibility to constantly be aware of that, when before that it was different because you can have just stressful kind of days and moments. Really, the only person that's around most of the time is yourself, your significant other, and kind of help you work through it. But now it's like you have an ultimate responsibility because you are doing that for yourself, affecting, the people around you, and then setting an example for your kids. So yeah, like you said, just really finding that like center to be able to come at it from a much more present space, I guess I should say.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Well, I'm not sure how deep you want to go with this, but with like populations that you've worked with and times that you've had out on the water with people, how have you seen that with others out on the water that you've really been able to kind of connect with them on like a deeper level versus if you're sitting with them in like an office? I don't know if that kind of makes sense what I'm asking there, but
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, it's everything from people are afraid to get in the water. People will tell you, "Oh, I'm afraid." Everybody's afraid, right? You stand on the edge of the water, Tyler, there are days for everybody that you go, "I can't do this." Right? And so it's pushing yourself one step further. I used to facilitate ropes course programming, and we tapped a lot into fear also, and trying to get people outside of their comfort zone and really getting them into teaching them that you can do anything you want. You can have any life that you want. And you see a lot of that, like with surfing, is like understanding like how far you can push yourself. Um, Anxiety is fear. Fear is your imagination undirected. So it's thinking about all the things that could go wrong, right? Like, personally for me, sometimes I'm out in the water and you feel something swim past your leg and you just like get that real gut feeling. You're like, oh no. For
especially
me,
in
that's
Florida,
helped me.
it's like everything
I
that
believe
touches my
that's
leg.
true. Yeah. Oh, brutal. For me, that's like even helped. Like some days I'll sit out there and I'll start to feel paranoid, right? But it's like, I have clients that feel paranoid and it makes me have empathy towards like, oh, this is how you feel. Like this is like that sense that you get. So there's everything on that level to just really like, for the average person, we all have stuff that we don't think that we could do, and just getting yourself to face it and sit in your emotions. I don't know, just feel connected.
Yeah, and I'm sure too, just after making that transition in your professional career, that you are able to really like really get on their level of being kind of at a peaceful state, being in the water, being in something that you love to do. And I'm sure it's made such a difference too for how you present yourself as a professional, if that makes sense. Like you're in your environment. You're not in a hospital room or whatever. That's just kind of these artificial, stressful, like
Yep.
literally they're meant to be stressful environments. So I'm sure that you've noticed a lot of change with that too.
Oh, yeah, it breaks down that, in theater, they call it the fourth wall. I don't know what they call it in therapy. We haven't created that yet, but yeah, I mean, people can sit in a room in therapy and be like, "I'm working on my anger," right? But then when you go out there and they pow for a wave and they don't catch 50 waves in a row and they're just like, their frustration tolerance is through the roof, you go, "Uh-huh, okay, let's figure it out. Let's work through it." It's that real time, like, experiential, process of, "Okay, well, here it is." Like, it's such a gift, I think, to see people in, like, that natural state of, it just is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. And I'm just so excited to see where your business goes and continues to grow because how many settings and how many offerings are there in the world that offer that? Like you said, like you could talk about these emotions, you could talk about the strategies, and then it's like, okay, on your way. Good luck with them. Let me know how you utilize them. But in the water and Swell Therapy, you could actually go and face those in the moment. And then you have somebody like yourself that's in a very grounded, calm state in your environment that you're able to be there and just be like, hey, I love where I am right now. And I can let you know, like, it's going to be okay. And it's not just like hey, this book told me that this is going to be okay. So you're going to be okay and try that. It's like, no, you could
Yeah.
actually be there and say, hey, you're going to feel this and that's completely normal and it's okay. And yeah, I feel like the sky's the limit really for surf therapy in general, but I'm so excited to see where it continues to go with you.
Thank you. Me too. I started this because I wanted to offer something to our community, and I'm realizing that it's much more than that. There's so many people that are searching for their own healing, and I've gotten a really cool group of people that have outreached and just said, "Hey, I've been searching for this for a long time." So I went from a mindset of trying to sell people on surf therapy to understanding that people are looking for it. I've tried meds, I've tried this, I've tried that, and, I just need something that is really natural and makes sense. So I think we got something cool.
Yeah, and, from the social work lens, like, you're looking at it from this one perspective, but there's so many facets of therapy that can be addressed by getting in the water too, and when I had done, like, a bit of aqua therapy and utilized surfboards pretty frequently in my practice, and just working too on, like, things that in today's world, a lot of kids suffer just from, like, that poor core strength and slouching and, like, not having really that, proximal strength and being able to keep themselves upright because we're constantly, looking at a screen or not getting outdoors and not playing. And then you get them on a surfboard and it's like, okay, well, we're able to really work with it and kind of challenge you leaning to this side and challenge you leaning to that side. And then that's a whole nother episode that we can go down. But then the sensory system and the sensory input that you're giving them to really be able to kind of like get the feedback for that. So just so many facets to it for parents that are listening with younger kids that you might be in occupational therapy or physical therapy and you're not really seeing the results that you want in a clinic. Like, get them outside. And I mean, there's really no better way than, like, not even just in the ocean. You could take them on a hike and take them wherever and really get a lot of the benefits that, like, an OT might look at it and the way that you might look at it. It's so different than being indoors. And I think that that's where a lot of our ailments come from as adults, and a lot of really the way that the younger generation is growing up. It's because it's so comfortable just to be comfortable, and locking yourself inside's not doing it. And it's causing so many
Yeah,
issues.
it's not the answer for sure. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan, and he always talks about our physiology and changing your state, right? Like changing the way that you're standing will make you feel different, right? So, exactly what you're saying, right? I don't know anybody that sits around all the time that feels super happy, right? You have to move, you have to go and do stuff. Um, whether it's surfing or not surfing, you have to move your body to feel good.
Yeah, and just the outdoor environments too, and fresh air. It's we all know it and we all could feel it, but just really prioritizing, like, working into your day, even if you can't, if you're not a surfer and it's something that seems like far fetched at the moment, work your way up to finding a way to go for a swim in a pool once a week, or go on your lunch break, step outside and walk in circles on the grass with your shoes off. Like, just something that's really gonna, like you said, change your state and change your environment. And doing the same for our kids is just so important. We do our best to, at 10 months, our daughter doesn't watch TV, and we're not like one of those, create, well, I guess, yeah, we are. I'm going to proudly say we are one of those parents that don't want our kids on electronics, but we just really see, like, and especially with working with kids over the last 6 years, it breaks my heart to, like, walk into a waiting room in a clinic and just see 5 kids in there, and every single one of them are just nose down into their tablet. Or when you're trying to talk to a kid and there's a TV on and their eyes are over here and they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I'm listening to you. And I mean, it's like that as adults too, but just being able to, like, early on, try to reduce screen time. I'm not saying screen time is the devil, without a doubt. I mean, it's very beneficial for some, parents that kind of need time to shower and things like that. Like, I get it, but just try your best to prioritize where we all came from, which was not, the indoor environments and just getting outdoors. And I'm sure, you spending time in Fiji and just kind of seeing too, like, how different people live and environments that are less developed than us. It just makes sense why they're happier.
And you're so right about the screen time. I think it's the number one thing that people really need to do is put it down. I'm a big nerd. I love to study neurobiology, and there's a big thing, right? We study like eye gaze, right? Like being able to look into somebody's eyes. When you look into somebody's eyes for long enough, it creates oxytocin, which is the bonding chemical. It creates attachment, right? So if you're looking at a generation of kids that feel really alone, um, there's no secret behind why. That's like one of the biggest contributing things to it is they're not having enough time like in person with people. So yeah, I love that you guys are doing such little screen time with your little one because it's so important. Like you're helping her brain develop in such safe ways that she's going to feel really secure and never know why. Maybe she feels like that and somebody else might not.
and you could probably speak more on this too, but like the attachment to that's how kids regulate now. Like you see a lot kid screaming in a shopping cart or something, and then mom's like, "All right, here you go, here." And then it's like, okay, so I know when I cry, I know when I'm upset that I have this to look at. And I personally have my tendencies too. Like if I'm super stressed out, I'll catch myself like scrolling on Instagram and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like I'm
Sure.
aware of this, but we're kind of like trained to do that. But especially from a 1 year old, 2 years old, like to have that being kind of your regulation technique is so scary. And it's just so many children that we'd see just to work specifically on like emotional regulation in our clinics. And it's so hard to just get them to calm any other way, but like, all right, let's put, some type of stimulation on. It's so hard to just be silent or not have something to look at that is lighting up and, something that's just kind of catching your attention.
Yeah, well, when you don't put a screen in front of somebody, you're teaching them how to deal.
Yeah.
You're teaching them how to sit in the emotion, to figure it out, to sit and give it time, right? Like so many people don't know how to deal with their emotions because they want to be distracted from it. They just want to be removed from it. We avoid, but you need to sit and deal with it. And so, what a great life skill you give your kids by not shoving something in their face or something that's distracting. You let them just sit in it and feel it, and then they can get over it, or move past it, or learn from it, or whatever whatever else it needs to be. But there is there is a real problem that people have in this young generation that they don't know how to feel. I don't know that our generation is like much better at it, but I see it getting worse and worse. And I'm not that old where I'm like, oh, I'm one of these old people that's like, oh, I don't know about the next generation. I'm not that old, but it's a dramatic difference. And I really think a big part of it is the phone and technology. It disconnects you.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. It's scary, but there are very simple solutions, like really making the time to get outside. And the other thing too, and I'm coming out with a book in a few weeks that is really just about like simplifying and using nature to like nature activities and stuff like that. But one of the big things that I touch on is the unstructured time too, because everything in today's world with parents and with kids, like you're constantly filling your schedules. There's something to do always. There's soccer practice, there's gymnastics, and those things are awesome. Don't get me wrong. But imagine being a kid, and a lot of our lives are like that too. It's not like it's just this generation thing, but imagine being a kid and always having something to do, and then becoming an adult and transitioning away from that when that's all you know. It's so hard. And that's why so many of us today have trouble sitting, because it's like, shit, I have this to do. I got to go vacuum. I got to this, I got to that. And then I got this appointment and then I got to go see these people. It's like, just give your kid the luxury of nothing to do. And it sounds scary because it's like, well, if they have nothing to do and no toys to play with, what are we going to do? But gradually working up to like getting outdoors and giving them a friggin' stick and a bucket. It's like, you give that to an 8-year-old that all they know is a tablet and they're like, what the hell's this? What am I supposed to do with this? But like facilitating that too. And I may be plugging my book a little bit here, but just getting,
Oh, I love that.
having those opportunities to like get creative. And it might be a challenge for the parent too, like being able to find how you do it, but the unstructured time and just going outside and not being like, we're going to go on this hike and follow this specific trail, just doing things and seeing where your kid takes you. That's the most important thing. They need the confidence to know that they can go down a certain rabbit hole of thought, of pursuit, of activity for their interests to come about, where I really see a lot of parents and families nowadays that really just want to force what they enjoy doing, thinking that their kid's going to like it, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, well, what a blessing for your kid and, your book to teach other people. It's like, no, uncertainty is good. There's a lot of positive to it, right? We start to look at things like wonder, right? Like how cool is it that your imagination and wondering about things and that creativity again, right? Versus like being forced to be regimented and Freud would call it being anal, right? It's like, yeah, you really that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. And I mean, for parents or anybody really that's listening, that's like, that seems like it's relatively simple, but something that I'm not currently doing. Like I'm right there too. It's just because I'm writing the book to say like, this is how it's done doesn't mean we're perfect with it too. And we know sometimes, I mean, my days are so structured and I try to do as much as I can, but then I also like really try to work in the time too as an adult to have the unstructured time, to have like the time to be creative or whatever it is. So it's important for your kids, but it's just as important, if not more important, to do it for yourself too, to give yourself the time and to be able to just have time to breathe, really. And it's hard to find in our lives today.
Yeah. Yeah. As a parent, do you have thinking time where you just sit and you have time to think for yourself? There's parents that do it all different sorts of ways, right? You have a cup of coffee in the morning or whatever it is, but do you have 10 minutes a day to sit and write or spend time with your own thoughts? It's probably going to make you a healthier parent.
Yeah. And then a person in general, without a doubt. But well, thank you for bringing your expertise and your perspectives to the show. It's awesome to be able to really share it with, like another healthcare worker and be able to have the same perspectives when it comes also to how to spend your free time. And yeah, really cool. It's sometimes far and few in between to find that. So it's been just a pleasure connecting with you on that stuff, without a doubt.
Thanks so much for reaching out. Yeah, I think we have a lot to connect on and look forward to your book too. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah. But before I let you completely off the hook, I got one question for you. So if you could offer just one piece of advice to listeners, whether that is a mindset tip or a practical parenting tip, what would that be and why?
Sure. So I have a motto. It's stop the world and fix it. So for me, what my advice is to lean into discomfort, right? If you have something on your mind, just deal with it. So many people spend a lot of time avoiding, running from, um, maybe you're lying to yourself and saying it's not as big of a deal as it is. But when you stop and you lean into this discomfort, you do the work on yourself, whether that be in therapy or not. There's tons of things that you could do on your own. You'll be a better person. You know, People are afraid to go back and revisit, old wounds or stressful times in their life. They're afraid to look deeper into like big questions on their mind. And my advice for people is to just lean into it, do it, because you'll be a much better person for having done it. You'll be a better parent to your kids if you're a parent listening to this, but you'll be able to teach your kids how to really be free. Um, I don't know, free to love, free to be a great friend, a great husband, a great wife, you know, free yourself of whatever is on your mind. Um, yeah, stop the world and fix it is my big thing. Don't be afraid. Lean into it.
Amazing. And it reminds me, I recently, I'm not sure exactly where or what I was listening to, but they talked about like the way that we better ourselves or improve ourselves physically is we have to kind of go through pain. Like running's not fun sometimes. Lifting, it doesn't exactly feel good. I mean, if you kind of change it to the fact that it does, it can. But when you're paddling out surfing and your shoulders feel like they're going to fall off and you can't breathe and then you got to get held under, like it doesn't feel good, but we seek those experiences to kind of up level ourselves physically. So, I mean, mentally and the things within us, same thing, like just seeking and kind of diving into those discomforts going to get us the same really benefits that we would get physically too. It's really no different. Just because it's not physical, touch it, matter, doesn't mean your mind and your internal state is any less important. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
But, all right. Well, again, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure and I've had so much fun connecting with you and really appreciate you making the time again.
Thanks, Tyler. It's been a pleasure.
All right. To all the listeners, we will see you next time. Much love.